The president has confidence in the director.
The president, over the last several months, lost confidence in Director Comey.
Well, no wonder some people joke about never wanting to hear that President Trump has confidence in them. This story never ceases to shock, and there's been lots of it for months now. Helping guide us through the Trump maze has been David Frum, senior editor at The Atlantic and a former speechwriter for George W. Bush. He's with us again tonight from Washington. David, you wrote another great piece for The Atlantic online overnight. I want to read you a couple of quotes from it to push you on it. And this is the first one. Now comes the hour of testing. Will the American system resist, or will it be suborned? Is it resisting as of tonight?
Parts of the system are, important parts are not. The director of the FBI plays a special role in American life. He's appointed, or she is appointed, for 10 years. They're appointed by a president. They're theoretically fireable by a president, but in practice they have broader responsibilities. They're never seen as really part of a president's administration. It's law enforcement. It's just too important. When President Trump removed the FBI director 28 hours ago for reasons that have quickly disintegrated, he struck a severe blow at the way Americans have governed themselves, not the written rules, but the unwritten ones. So here are the parts that are working, here are the parts that are not. The part that is working is the media is collecting stories, and parts of the government are coming forward to tell the truth and to expose the unbelievable set of untruths that the president's people told in the first hours after the firing. But Congress has been completely absent. The majority party in Congress has endorsed, accepted, and submitted to the president's action.
Well, you weren't shy about sending a message to Congress in this piece. Here's something else you wrote in it. And it's a direct message, especially to Republicans in Congress. Will you allow a president of your party to attack the integrity of the FBI? You impeached Bill Clinton for lying about sex. Will you now condone and protect a Republican administration lying about espionage?
Because the background, the underlying offense in this case arises out of the 2016 campaign. It happened in front of all of our eyes that Russia interfered with the American election, as it recently tried to interfere with the election in France. The question that everyone is pondering is, to what degree did people in the Trump campaign talk back and coordinate with the Russians? At this point, it's pretty clear there was some degree of coordination from some people like Roger Stone, who are in contact with the Russian hackers. But Stone's kind of a weirdo. The question is it more central people in the Trump campaign? That is something we don't know the answer to, but it's a hugely important question. One thing that needs to be stressed is, even if all of that is true, it's not clear that it's a crime or against the law. And that's why these questions about a special prosecutor are kind of missing the point. What America needs is to know the truth about what happened. There may not be any charges filed. And one of the problems with the FBI, of course, is if they investigate something and don't find crimes, whatever else they find, no matter how unethical or anti-democratic or unpatriotic it is, they close the book on it. That's their duty.
Now, you know a lot of the Republicans on the Hill. When you talk to them, you're telling me that you're not hearing any serious evidence of resistance from them in calling for more than what they've done so far in terms of the different committee investigations.
Well, many individuals have spoken out. Senator Flake from Arizona, Senator McCain, of course, Senator Sass from Nebraska, and others have been more quietly resistant. But the leadership is solid. Here's the Republican predicament. They're shackled to Donald Trump. Many of them, especially in the leadership, know him for what he is and who he is, and know how little interest he has in them or their agenda. But they also know that if he goes down, they go down with him. There was a poll today released by Quinnipiac, that's quite a good poll, that shows Democrats now have a 16-point advantage on the generic ballot for the 2018 congressional elections. These two forces are joined together, and they thought they would control him. It turns out he's controlling them.
You know, when an excuse doesn't work, you move on to another excuse. And you talked about the administration's poor performance last night in trying to sell this firing. Today they had it, and they were using he was really just trying to make up for the bad time that Hillary Clinton had last year from Comey. Today they had a different reasoning. And here's how it was expressed by Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was filling in for Sean Spicer today. She actually did not a bad job compared with some of the days we've seen Spicer. But anyway, here's her line today.
I think one of the big catalysts that we saw was last week on Wednesday. Director Comey made a pretty startling revelation that he had essentially taken a stick of dynamite and thrown it into the Department of Justice by going around the chain of command when he decided to take steps without talking to the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General when holding a press conference and telling them that he would not let them know what he was going to say. And that is simply not allowed.
The old chain of command argument. Now, she called it a startling revelation. It really wasn't. It's been around for a while. We've known about it. But nevertheless, that's the theory today as to why Comey was fired. Do you buy it at all?
Of course not. No, look, generally, one story, no matter how bad, is better than 4 stories, no matter how good. They had one story that was bad, and now they have 4 stories, actually, that aren't very good, but that make it clear that the first story was untrue. We are hearing every day, or every hour, I should say, examples of things that Donald Trump personally said. Donald Trump's firing letter. He claims that Director Comey had assured him that he, Donald Trump, was not under investigation. 3 times, the president said, Director Comey had said that. Well, had Director Comey said that, that would have been terribly improper. He's not supposed to brief anybody, including the President of the United States, on what is and what isn't being investigated. But Comey's people, and apparently probably Comey himself, that's probably who the source that talked to Jake Tapper about this was, have now said that's not true. Comey never said that to the president. And at this point, no one's going to take Donald Trump's word for it. If Comey says something didn't happen and Donald Trump says it did, then it didn't.
Here's another snippet from today. This is Hallie Jackson from NBC questioning, once again, Huckabee Sanders. Here, watch this.
Yes or no, did the president direct Rod Rosenstein to write this memo on James Comey?
No, the president had lost, again, like I said, he'd lost confidence in Director Comey, and frankly, he'd been considering letting Director Comey go since the day he was elected. But he did have a conversation with the Deputy Attorney General on Monday where they had come to him to express their concerns. The president asked that they put those concerns and their recommendation in writing, which is the letter that you guys have received.
So it is the White House's assertion that Rod Rosenstein decided on his own, after being confirmed, to review Comey's performance?
Absolutely.
All right, Rosenstein is the Deputy Attorney General. He wrote this memo suggesting Comey should be fired. He's considered a pretty stand-up guy by people from both sides of the aisle in Washington. So what are we actually saying here? That he got used?
Well, that is one of the big mysteries because, as you said, the Deputy Attorney General is somebody with a fine reputation. It's not clear exactly that part of the story. But you'll note that that letter does not actually call for Comey to be fired. It goes through a list of the things that Comey did that are questionable. And look, there's a lot to question. But where Donald Trump sort of is, this is like, imagine you have a job discrimination case and you have an employee who was tardy and who wasn't accurate in expense accounts. That might be a good reason to fire that employee, unless you find an email from the boss in which the boss says, I fired the employee because she was a woman, and I hate working with women. And at that point, it doesn't matter that, yeah, she was tardy, and yeah, her expense accounts weren't clear. We have proof positive of an improper reason for the firing, and everything else is an excuse. That's where we are with Comey. He mishandled the Clinton investigations. Everybody, I think, thinks that from different points of view. But it's now overwhelmingly apparent and confirmed by all kinds of knowledgeable people. The motive for the firing was that Comey was too close to the Russia matter. That's what was bothering Donald Trump, not the other things. When has Donald Trump ever cared about any of those things?
You know, they trotted out the vice president today, Mike Pence. Here's what he had to say.
Did the president direct the deputy?
Leadership here, I think, represents the kind of strong leadership that the American people expect. That the American people expect a president to act on the recommendations of those within the administration who are charged with oversight. In this case, the Deputy Attorney General provides the oversight to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. While the Deputy Attorney General was confirmed just a few short weeks ago by the United States Senate, when he brought the recommendation to the president that the director of the FBI should be removed, President Trump provided the kind of strong and decisive leadership the American people have come to be accustomed from him.
You know, it's tough being a vice president because you're kind of left with those lines, like he said just at the end there. Beyond that, is there anything, are we seeing any kind of signal from Pence on what he's really making of all this unfolding?
Pence is one of those who's shackled. Just one thing, what Vice President Pence said. Remember the point about one bad story is still better than 4 good stories. This president's spokeswoman said that the president had begun considering firing Director Comey from the day the president began office. We know from a variety of other sources that this process began about the 2nd of May. We know from now close to 30 sources reported in the Washington Post and the New York Times and other places that this was driven by Donald Trump's anger that Comey would not back up his Donald Trump's crazy story about Obama wiretapping him, and that Comey was asking for more resources for the Russia investigation. So what the vice president said is just flagrantly untrue. And yeah, it's tough being a vice president, but you also have to bear in mind that you collect your salary from the American people. And there is this idea in the Trump administration that they all answer to the president. And that is how you get into terrible trouble. The president is your superior. You are supposed to obey his lawful instructions, but you are never supposed to lie for him. And you're certainly not supposed to lie for him in a law enforcement matter.
Where's all this heading, David? I got a minute left.
It's heading toward a crisis, but not a quick resolution. Congress is rallying to the president. They will close ranks on him. I don't think you will see any kind of action. And remember, the Russia scandal is probably not about crimes. It's probably about espionage, about disloyalty, about other improper things. But there's not going to be some indictment, I think, because what they did, however bad, is probably not against the law.
But it could be treason, too. I mean, if you want to do the could-bes and where it could lead.
You might call it treasonable, but treason is defined in the Constitution as waging war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to its enemies. Russia is not an enemy. We're not at war with Russia.
Well, it's certainly a story that's not going away, whatever way you look at it. It just keeps bubbling along, and he can't seem to dodge it. David, as always, thanks for your help on this.
Thank you very much.